Welcome back to Tabletop Titans for another Titan Tactics. So let's talk about how the Leagues of Votann are performing right now in the meta, in the competitive scene, and what are some likely synergies that you should be looking at running if you're Votann, and synergies you should be looking to play against if you're against them. Of course, if you do find this video to be useful, do consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It really does help us grow and lets us also know what you enjoy watching. Let's take a look. So let's take a look at two of the most popular sub-factions, the Greater Therian League and the Ymir Conglomerate. The Greater Therian League, or the GTL, has a couple of interesting abilities. You are going to count as an extra model for holding objectives, which is really going to help negate these difficulties with holding on primary, as we mentioned. And of course, one of the biggest benefits is they have the named character, Votann, who is an absolute beast. His main ability is to allow an auto 6 on a nearby unit. This can provide some ridiculous synergies with things like the railguns that have extra abilities that proc on 6s. We're talking about reliable ways of having the ability that ignores invulns, that does mortal wounds, and that has splash damage throughout an entire unit. So very, very lethal, and has some good combos with some other characters, which we'll talk about in a bit. The Ymir Conglomerate is probably the best all around of the Leagues of Votann because it gives you a little bit of everything. They have a ton of durability. If you have a 2+ save, it's going to give you a 4+ invulnerable save. And if you don't have that, don't worry, you still get a 5+ invulnerable save. This is going to make key units such as the Berserks even tougher, and it makes things like the Terminator equivalents very, very, very durable indeed, on top of the Land Fortress. Don't forget, of course, that they do get an extra AP when within half range of a unit with a Judgment token, just in case you were worried that they didn't have other ability. Beams were a new mechanic introduced with the Leagues of Votann army, and they have some particularly interesting synergies right now. You have access to the Core Buster Fire Pattern, which is a stratagem that allows you to do mortal weapons with beams. Don't forget, it does require to have previously shot at the unit with beam weapons, so setting up that shot is essential for playing with the Votann, and also, of course, playing against them, trying to take out those beam synergies. Beam Charge, which is a Ymir-specific stratagem, and this is going to generate a mortal for every single hit from a single beam weapon. So you don't want to look to weapons that have multiple shots from a single beam weapon. Mortal wounds, of course, always the great balancer in 40k. A warlord trait that you're going to see a lot with these Land Fortress heavy lists, Master Armor with vehicles. This is going to give the Brokir Forge Master the ability to zero out a single hit against a heavy support. This will be a great way to negate that single multi-melta that finally works its way through, and on top of having the ability to automatically heal 4 wounds. So pretty powerful stuff there. Of course, if you haven't heard the legends of the Echamp, now is the time. We of course have the Magic Bullet Echamp with a couple of upgrades. You take Warrior Lord and Exactor. This is going to give the ability to reroll wounds and ignore brackets and feel no pains. Amazing. And then additionally, it's going to have a 3+ D3 damage weapon, where 6s to wound go straight through to mortals. This is an amazing combination already, and you can further combo it with Votann, who we mentioned earlier, to trigger that automatic 6, going straight to 3+ D3 mortal wounds. Absolutely ridiculous. As if that wasn't enough, they also have -1 damage, -1 to wound, no rerolls to wound, and reduce AP by 1. What? Of course, you can also pick the crest for this this magic boy, and it's going to give you access to either transhuman or a once per game redeploy in the form of the jump. Least of all, of course, he also happens to be a lieutenant. This is just an amazing unit with an amazing combo potential. So when you're playing with Leagues of Votann, it's going to be essential that you deliver him properly and don't let him get shot down or killed by mortal wounds in return. And if you're playing against Leagues of Votann, you really need to deal with this guy as soon as possible with all the methods that we just mentioned. So this is a lot to process. So let's take a look at a recent tournament list and see how a lot of these concepts come into play. This is a list from Diogo Pita, who got 4th place at the Stutter Snotling. He did not lose a single game, went 5-1-0. This was 130 players, so pretty good size there. And of course, we've got this list from Goonhammer, so shout out to them. Diogo is running a Ymir for extra AP at half range and has tons of scanners to be able to ignore cover. All the warriors, the pioneers, and the fortresses all have it. And there's a cool combo you can do with the Grimnir, where he runs up, turns off the invulnerable saves, and of course, you're so up in their face that you're going to be getting that extra AP going into them. Really fantastic in the post-Armor of Contempt world. You can see Diogo is really conscious of the amount of CP the army is going to need, so he has the CP regen, psychic power, and the ability to reduce war gear strap by 1 on the Forge Master. This is going to be essential to using all the amazing stratagems that the Leagues of Votann have access to. You see a single squad here of warriors, which is pretty interesting. This is really going to give you access to a bit more objective secured. The Pioneers give that aggressively, and the warriors just can kind of hold the back line and play it as you see fit. Ultimately, the bikes are likely to die earlier on in the game, and this will give you some obsec throughout the rest of the turns. Just 2 units of Berserks here, kitted out, of course, with the grenade launcher for the Fight Last ability, for just the right amount of melee. And closing it out, we have 2 units of really cheap Thunderkin. They are just amazing. 3 models, 105 points, toughness 5, 3 wounds, ignore dense cover, and of course he has the Graviton Blast Cannon, which is pretty fantastic, and it goes well into a lot of the meta monsters right now. Last but certainly not least, this list is sporting 2 Lane Fortresses. He of course has Master Armor to babysit them, which is going to let him zero out the damage and heal him. Really tough to kill, of course, in Ymir, with a 2+ save and a 4+ invulnerable save. So you can see where this list is really trying to lean into a lot of the synergies and balance out the weaknesses that the army has. You know, shout out to Diogo, well done on your placement at Stutter Snotling. There you have it. It is a ton of information on the Leagues of Votann. Feel free to scrub back and check out the other parts of the video because there's a lot to come back to as you play your game, as you practice your games. If you're playing against Votann, hopefully this was helpful to be able to counter some of the abilities that they have. Ultimately, we're curious what you all think in the comments below. The game is always changing and the Votann are frankly always changing. So let us know if there are any other combos or tips or tricks that you can think of that we may have missed. As always, thank you so much for hanging out. I'll catch y'all next time on the tabletop. Bye!